On the streets of Hiroshima, Japan, life seemed as ordinary as ever. Some hurried to work, others opened up their small shops. Even as the shadow of war loomed over them, most citizens still clung to a comforting illusion that the Empire of Japan was marching toward victory. They didn't know the truth. The American forces had already reached Japan's home islands, but under strict wartime censorship, the public was still trapped in the dream of certain victory for the empire. Yet, there was something different about Hiroshima these past few days. People had begun finding small leaflets scattered across the city, dropped by American planes. The leaflets read, "Japan has already been defeated. We will soon drop a new type of bomb, one of unprecedented power. Evacuate immediately." But the people only laughed. How could the invincible Japanese army be defeated? They said they thought it was just another trick to break their morale. And so, no one left Hiroshima. They had no idea. That high above them, a B-29 bomber armed with an atomic bomb was already waiting for the perfect moment. The weather was clear. Visibility, excellent. Wind speed ideal for bombing. August 6, 1945, 8:09 a.m. The sky above Hiroshima was cloudless. Through the cockpit window, the city below looked calm and bright. Colonel Paul Tibbets, pilot of the B-29 Enola Gay, guided his aircraft toward the target. At 8:11 a.m., the bomber reached the outskirts of Hiroshima. It began climbing higher and higher, until it reached 10,000 meters. A weather plane had already confirmed. Conditions were perfect. Tibbets gave the order, fly straight toward the heart of the city. 8:15 a.m., the Enola Gay entered the skies above central Hiroshima. Bombardier Major Thomas Farabee looked through the bomb sight and locked onto the target, the IOI bridge, right in the city's center. 8:15 and 17 seconds. The steel clamps holding little boy suddenly released. The 4.1-ton uranium bomb dropped from the bay doors, plunging straight down. As the weight left the plane, the crew felt a sudden lightness. Without hesitation, Tibbets pulled into the pre-planned evasive turn. 43 seconds later, at 580 meters above the ground, little boy detonated. Inside the bomb, a small explosive charge slammed a uranium bullet into a uranium target. The instant they reached critical mass, a chain reaction ignited like thunder. A blinding fireball erupted, unleashing shockwaves and radiation that tore through the city. Within the blast zone, people standing in the open never even had time to react. In a flash of 6,000 degrees, their bodies vaporized, leaving only faint black shadows burned into the ground and walls. Even those inside reinforced buildings were not spared. The intense light pierced through cracks and windows, igniting furniture in an instant. Flames and smoke roared through every room. Some who survived the initial blast tried to flee outside, only to be hurled backward by waves of super-heated air over 400 degrees Celsius. Their skin stuck to the ground as they fell. When they tried to stand, it peeled off in sheets, exposing raw muscle and white tissue beneath. At 1.5 kilometers from ground zero, everything was destroyed. Those who weren't vaporized were burned beyond recognition. Charred humans, survivors would later say. Their faces and arms were covered in black, cracked scabs that tore away at the slightest touch. Yellow pus and blood dripped down, pooling beneath their feet. Some had their clothes melted into their flesh, and when they tried to pull them off, the skin came with it. They writhed on the ground, moaning hoarsely, unable to even scream. The shockwave reached as far as 4.5 kilometers away. Even those untouched by the fire were crushed, broken, and poisoned by radiation. Many were trapped under collapsed houses, limbs shattered, bones exposed. The wounds were seared shut by heat, their blood boiled away. Others inhaled burning ash, their lungs scorched raw, every breath like swallowing broken glass. Those who somehow survived that day could not escape death for long. Radiation would slowly eat away at their bodies, and within a few short years, claim them all.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima. We have won. What has been done is the greatest achievement of organized science in history. He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Sir, at the time that you first found out about the atomic bomb, did you regard it as a curse or a blessing to mankind?
Well, I thought it was a blessing. I thought it could be used and made a blessing. I never worried about it being a curse. I wanted a weapon that would win the war, and it did. That's what I was interested in.
After the bombing of Hiroshima, everyone thought Japan would finally surrender. But what happened next left the Americans completely stunned. Japan's leaders claimed that the United States had only one atomic bomb, and that it would be nearly impossible to make another. Therefore, they believed Japan still had room to fight. President Harry S. Truman had already rehearsed his speech announcing the end of the war. But when Japan refused to surrender, he scratched his nearly bald head and said, "Then we'll drop another one." Soon after, the 509th Composite Group received new orders. The next bomb, codenamed Fat Man, was ready. Its target, the Japanese city of Kakura. Once again, a B-29 bomber would carry the weapon, this time under the command of Major Charles Sweeney. Unlike the uranium bomb dropped on Hiroshima, this one used plutonium, and its destructive power was even greater. The bomber reached the skies over Kakura, but suddenly, thick clouds rolled in, blanketing the entire city. The crew made 3 separate passes, trying to find a clear line of sight. Each time, the clouds refused to break. Without a clear view of the target, they couldn't release the bomb. Following protocol, Sweeney made the call. We're moving to the secondary target, Nagasaki. When they reached Nagasaki, the skies were just as clouded. But through a brief opening in the clouds, the bombardier managed to lock onto a small gap and released Fat Man. Moments later, an explosion tore through the city. The blast engulfed everything in a sea of fire and smoke. As the plane climbed sharply away, the crew looked back. A towering column of black cloud rising to the heavens. This time, the devastation was even greater than Hiroshima. The plutonium bomb carved a second scar into Japan's history, one the world would never forget. After the second bomb, Japan's leaders finally realized there was no longer any point in resisting. They accepted defeat. World War II was coming to an end. From a humanitarian perspective, the loss of innocent lives, the elderly, the women, the children, is beyond justification. They held no power over the war's decisions. They never invaded anyone. Their innocence is undeniable. But war is never isolated. Under Japan's wartime militarism, the state and the people became deeply intertwined. Civilians worked in munitions factories, or were mobilized to support the war effort. Some may not have committed violence themselves, but they were still caught inside the machinery of war. Years later, the man who dropped the first atomic bomb, Colonel Paul Tibbets, was invited onto a television program. And there, someone asked him a question. This doesn't make them guilty, but it blurs the boundary of what it means to be completely innocent. And it reminds us that the true blame of war should always rest on the architects of militarism, those who planned it, commanded it, and fueled it with ideology.
How would you like to be remembered?
Oh, I've been asked that before.
I'm sure.
I did what I was told to do, and I was damn proud of it.
Absolutely no regrets.
No regrets, whatever. I've never lost a night's sleep. I've never lost 15 minutes sleep. This was war. I didn't carry the war with me. I didn't start the war. I had a job to do during wartime, and nothing personal entered into that. I was going to do what I was told to do.